All right. Good morning, all. We are going to start intro to baking because there's so much about it and there's so many different parts to this that it's probably going to take us all the way to spring break. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Let me go to share screen with you guys. This is going to be a quick lesson. There's a lot to baking, and we have a lot to go over. So, all right. So just to get you going, so Intro to Baking, Chapter 19. This is in the first year book. Just to go over the parts of ingredients you need for baking. So we start out fats or shortenings, which could be butters and oils. Sweeteners, which could be a variety of things from sugar to syrup to artificial sweetener to natural sweeteners like honey, molasses. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Chemical, organic, and physical leaveners. So baking powder, baking soda, yeast, and steam. Thickeners, so cornstarch, flour, eggs. Flavorings, which could be extracts and spices. So if you like vanilla, or if you're making gingerbread cookies, ginger. So spices. Liquids could be water, cream, milk, eggs, honey, molasses, butter. Any of these liquids could be included in there. And additives would be your food colorings. I don't really like using food colorings, so we probably won't use those in class, mainly because they're messy and I don't know. I'd rather just go natural. Okay, so we're just going to go through a few parts of this. As far as strengtheners go, strengtheners would be your flours. Okay, so they provide stability. Depends on what the main strengthener is used. Uh, always check your gluten content on the nutrition label. So, and we'll go over that in a second of what gluten means. Higher protein means higher gluten. Gluten is the protein in flour. And too much mixing, working, kneading equals elastic and stretchy, which you'll see this when we start making dough. All right, so as far as the types of flour you use, you have your basic all-purpose flour, which most people have at their house. That's for cookies, biscuits, general production work. When you look down here, it says gluten content 10 to 12%. What that means is 10 to 12% of protein, of the gluten protein inside the bread. The lower the gluten, the more flaky and less chew, less bite you have. The higher the protein, the more chew there's going to be. So put this in perspective. When you bite into a piece of cake, you should not pull it like it's pizza. It should just kind of fall apart. It should just be tender. It shouldn't have a lot of chew to it. So it should be really light and fluffy. That's what people usually describe cake as. So that would be like a cake flour, which is right here. Okay. 7 to 9% gluten or protein in there. So back here, so all purpose is like in the middle. Okay. So you have your bread flours, which are like 14%. So that's for your pizza and heavy chew, heavy bite doughs. All the way down to 7%, which is going to be for things that you don't want that in. So mainly cakes. I mean, you can use this for biscuits if you want or something like that, but it's not going to hold it together as much. So it's all based on the type of flour and the protein content. So like I said, all purpose, 10 to 12%. Bread flour has a gluten content of 12.5 to 13%. And that's for your bread and hard rolls. So I put a picture of French bread there. Cake flour, smooth, soft texture, pure white in color. For cake and delicate baked goods, 7 to 9%. All right, durum flour, this is an Italian style, hard wheat flour. All right, so if you look at this bread dough down here, that's why I put that on there. This has 13.5 to 14% gluten content. So a lot of protein when you, and then just a prime example, once you, say you took all these flours and made, added water to them or started to proof them, started to activate them with the yeast. When you take this bread flour and you toss it in the air like you see with the pizzas, that will stretch. That is the protein in there holding that together and pulling it back. If you have a pastry flour, that has a little bit. But if you add cake flour, you don't want that stretch. You want yours to pull and come apart pretty much. Like you don't want it to be that thick bite. Pastry flour for cookies, pies, sweet yeast doughs, biscuits, muffins. Now, it doesn't have cake flour. It doesn't have cake on this list because pastry flour, if you think about it, if you're making one of these chocolatey eclairs, you want this dough to have structure to it, okay? You don't want it to be, like if you took a piece of cake and tried to pipe some cream into that, it's just gonna blow out the side because there's no protein that's holding that flour, that dough together. So these you don't want it to be super tough, but you want right in the middle. So when you go to fill these or you work with them more, they're not going to blow up. They're not going to fall apart, and your fillings aren't going to bust out the side. So like it says here, feels like cake flour, creamy color of bread flour, but it's just got a little bit lower gluten, even with AP flour. And the last one's semolina. So this is durum. This is semolina durum. Coarsely ground, fine texture for pastas and Italian pastries, and usually has a pretty high gluten content. Because when you're making your pasta, you don't want to use a weak flour for that because it's supposed to have a little tooth to it, like a little bite. After you boil this, you don't want it to fall apart into a million pieces. It needs to hold its structure. So if you use cake flour to make pasta, it would fall apart in a mush. That's why you have to use a stronger gluten content flour. Okay. We're only going to go into a couple parts of it. So fats and shortenings, what those do, they provide moisture, they add flavor, they stay fresh longer, they're thoroughly mixed, impact overall texture. Okay, and then here's the two different types. So you have rubbed, cut, or rolled flaky texture. So when we made biscuits at the beginning of the year, do you remember rubbing the butter and the flour together? See how you have these large chunks in here? You want to do that for multiple or for certain types of recipes, especially biscuits. You don't want to end up, okay, and here's the second part. This is creamed, so smooth, soft, cake-like. This is when you blend the butters and sugars together until it's completely smooth. You don't want to do that with certain things. When you're adding fat to your cookies, you want that. When you're adding fat to a biscuit, you don't want it blended together. You want those chunks inside your mixture. As far as stays fresh longer, naturally, if you have butter in something, that is dairy. So it could go bad faster. The cookies you guys see at like Kroger and those places, like in those plastic boxes, I'd say 9 times out of 10, those are shortening cookies, okay? So you have shortening, which is like Crisco. It's shelf stable. It lasts forever, it seems, but that's like a hydrogenated thickened oil that you can use. It does keep it's shelf stable. So once you bake things with that, they can stay out longer and they'll last longer. But it's a different flavor. So if you've ever had cookies that are made with 100% butter versus cookies that are made with 100% shortening, I can tell a complete difference, especially once the caramelization happens. So different things you could use. I mean, there's olive oil, vegetable oil, coconut oil. It just depends on the application and what you're cooking. So if you're making an oatmeal coconut cookie, you can use coconut oil. You can use coconut fat. So it just all depends on what you are making, what the recipe calls for. Okay, sweeteners. I think this is the last slide we're going to do is sweeteners. Okay. Sweeteners are refined sugars, sugar syrups, molasses, brown sugar, corn syrup, honey, malt syrup. So to just give you an idea, there's white cane sugar. Let me bring me over here. You have white cane sugar, which is from sugar cane, which not a lot of our sugar. We get a lot of sugar from that. We have sugar beets. So beets actually have a lot of sugar in them. They get sugar from multiple different things. Brown sugar, there's not a brown sugar tree. Brown sugar is white sugar with molasses added to it, and the amount of molasses makes it light brown or dark brown sugar, okay? Corn syrup, honey, malt syrup. They add flavor and color. When you blend your shortening with other ingredients, I don't know why they put that, makes the product soft and tender. It gives you good caramelization. So just to give you an idea of what happens with caramelization, this is cookie dough, as you can see. That has brown and white sugar in it. Once this is cooked, you get this. See how the color difference there? It's the flour might have turned a little bit brown, but the main browning going on in here is your sugar turning to caramel. Okay, that's pretty much what this is. That's called caramelization. Heat causes sugar to brown. Artificial sweeteners, so if you made something with Splenda or one of those, or a fake sweetener, they do not turn brown. That's the only bad thing about those, is it's hard. I can tell you when a cookie is done by the color of it, whereas sugar substitute cookies, it's hard. I've baked some recently, and it's hard to tell when they are finished and not overcook them because they never turn color. You know, they might get a little brown from the flour browning, but it's hard. It's really hard to see. So yeah, that's the different types of sugars, and then you use them. You can, I mean, every dough that you put them in, like you can put honey in everything from your bread dough to using it in a cookie. Okay, but it it has its main purpose of caramelization and adding sweetness. So that's where we're going to stop today, because tomorrow we're going to continue on with leavening agents, and we're going to keep going with baking and pastries for a while. All right, short one for you guys today, and I'll have a few questions for you. Goodbye.